Hello and welcome. It's stage 3 of the Tour of Hainan for 2017. We're making our way from Haikou to Chiang Mai, and here is some of the wonderful architecture that is being displayed and demonstrated to us on this excellent day of racing. Once more on this, well, what is perhaps one of the most important races on the entire Asian racing calendar. The riders are within 53 kilometers of the finish of this third stage. It's all boiling up nicely for what looks like it could well be another sprint finish, but I'll tell you what, we have had a hectic day of racing already. It is a fabulous display of racing, fabulous display of the history and the architecture, both new and old, that is on evidence here in the southernmost province of China, a tourism destination for Chinese residents and foreigners alike. And there is the bunch down below. The massed ranks, well, what's left of it at least, despite the fact that we've had 2 sprint stages over the first couple of days, by no means can you assume that this has been an easy bike race, because already 16 riders have been consigned to history in terms of 2017 Tour of Hainan at least. And we pick up the front of the bunch, and they've been going along at a fair old clip already today. 155.6 kilometers is the entire length of this stage. We've just got a little bit over 51 of those kilometers remaining, and I can tell you we're approaching the one and only classified climb of the day. That's reached with just under 51 kilometers remaining. So as the gradient starts to grip, you can already sense that these riders are on this category 4 ascent. There are 3 points on offer for the first 3 over the line, and no surprise that it's the Colts team that have gone to the front, because they've chased down pretty much everything all day. There was a group of 3 out front for a little while. That was closed down. Then there was a group of 5. It looked like that they were going to contest this climb of the day, but unfortunately for that group, the man who's leading the King of the Mountains, Vitaly Butts, wasn't in there, so these Colts squad have managed to close it down. Safely in the group at the moment is the winner of yesterday's second stage and the overall race leader, Jakub Mareczko from the Willier team. He will be paying close attention to what's going on at the moment, because you can see that the groups are starting to split up a little bit. The Colts squad have managed to get to the fore alongside me to run the rule over the riders, as indeed he has done over the first couple of days, and through the rest of the week is Magnus Backstedt. And Magnus, this has been an absolutely frenetic stage already.
Yeah, it certainly has been. It's quite an interesting way of setting out the tactics, but clearly the Coles team here with Vitaly Butts in the polka dot jersey, they are very keen on picking up further points for the King of the Mountains.
Yeah, looking good, isn't it? As the polka dot jersey makes its way through to the front of the bunch. Not going to get the top points on offer, but in the top 3, and that's going to keep the points ticking over. He's adding to his total, and I think he's likely to have extended his advantage. Make no assumptions on that. What I can tell you is that in that break of 5 riders, which it was, what, just a bit over a minute and a half up the road, it's Butts in the centre of the picture, just managing to add to his total, just a singleton point. We'll get full confirmation of the standings coming up very shortly, but Butts looking in good shape. But Benjamin Hill was in that breakaway group, just trying to pull a bit of a fast one. Didn't work out. Colts team closed it down. The one climb of the day has been dispensed with, and the riders are lined out as they get back into formation. Just over 50 kilometers remaining, and looks like there's a rider down in the middle of the group as they try and reassemble after the single climb of the day on this, the third stage of Tour of Hainan for 2017. The riders making their way down to Chiang Mai at the end of 155 and a bit kilometers of racing. A little bit of a solo move coming after that single category 4 ascent, and the riders are starting to feel the pinch a little bit. Lined out and weaving around the road, the characteristically wide boulevards, as we see. Just trying to get himself back into some sort of order is Tonelli, Alessandro Tonelli from Bardiani CSF, finding himself in the unloved position of on the deck. And now in a chasing position, and the Bardiani CSF squad haven't managed to extract too much from the first couple of days of racing. They'll be looking, I think, towards the back end of the week when the GC opportunities present themselves on the final weekend. But Tonelli is well, he's looking a little bit stiff. I don't think he's going to jump in there too quickly. The mechanic quickly on hand to assess the bicycle, but maybe perhaps someone needs to...
There's a new bike coming up there, because the front left lever of the brake lever on that bike is completely gone bust.
So Tonelli waits, reviews his own personal medical situation as well. I think he's going to be okay, isn't he? And he'll jump back in, but certainly getting back into the bunch at this moment in this situation isn't going to be easy, is it? Because that bunch are fairly charging along. They have done all day. They're ahead of schedule. It took ages for the break, such as it was, to establish itself. There were several moves. 3 riders up front contesting the first intermediate sprint of the day. Lou, Stephen Cuesta from the Hainan squad, and Marco Zanotti for the Monkey team. And there you get a real sense of Tonelli's issues. Struggling for a spare bike. Are they going to put him back on that one?
Yeah, they are sending him back out on that one.
So I suppose if he's riding on his own, he's probably all right, but I'm not sure if he's got a front brake. I'm always assuming that the front brake is on the left there, and probably not a reasonable assumption. Well, here's what we have for you today. Heading down to Chiang Mai from Haikou, which is one of the more important cities on the island. A circuitous route, 3 intermediate sprints, 1 climb. Climb's done, and that left-hand brake lever doesn't look too good, does it?
This looks like our man from yesterday, Jordan Shane from the Jelly Belly team. He's getting himself into a break again. Had a great ride yesterday. Really impressive.
So they picked up that break early on, brought it back within 50 kilometers of the finish, but now where's the team that's going to put manners on this? It could well be brewing up nicely for another move to head off the front.
Yeah, I certainly think so. And I mean, the finish today is fairly grippy. You know, we're looking at a false flat sprint after well, I don't know whether we can call it a climb, and it's at 2.5% uphill for about 1.5 kilometers, a little dip in the road, and then another kilometer or so just falls flat uphill all the way. So I mean, it should come down to a day for the sprinters again, and certainly some of the stronger sprinters. So whether Jakub Mareczko is feeling on top of his game today or not, we'll have to wait and see. But it's certainly looking at the early part of the stage, the Willia Trestina Selle Italia team were on the front doing a lot of work again, just like they have been in the first couple of days. But I'm pretty sure that they're going to want a move to go up the road again, just so it settles down the proceedings a bit in the peloton.
Well, if that move does head off up the road, then it looks like it's going to have a Jelly Belly powered by Maxis rider in there, because it's pretty hectic, isn't it? The wide open boulevards perhaps hoodwinking you into thinking that it's a flat road, but this is fairly rolling and difficult terrain for the riders after that climb, and it's providing the opportunity, because that bunch really hasn't got itself together in any sort of setup situation.
It's also a very expensive couple of points there for Vitaly Butz and Nicole's team. They really put an awful lot of work into that to get them to well, bring the break back and try and set Butz up for that King of the Mountains. This looks like a good little composition of riders, actually. Quite a dangerous one. Mark de Mar in there as well for the Hangzhou team.
Well, what a career he's had, the 33-year-old Dutchman. He was Curaçao national champion at one stage as well, wasn't he? And Mark de Mar, who's been plying his trade in this part of the world of late. Distinctive figure on the front of the bunch now, and his experience brought to bear. And they'll, as you say, some very strong riders have made it into this move. Could have legs. Mark de Mar just floating through the shot. The 5 riders up the road in this later stages. Marco Zanotti's managed to make it in there. He's got some good legs as well for this one. Emils Lupins, Luke Mudgway, and these riders working well in concert, and having managed to establish this advantage of just over 20 seconds. Got to get the food in, because we've still got 45 kilometers of racing left, and this group, which could well be the one to be given a little bit of rope and a little bit of an opportunity. That single climb of the day, coming as it did relatively close to the finish, and just that one climb, I think that contributed in large measure to the fact that we didn't have a breakaway group managing to establish itself for a long time, and when it did, it wasn't given more than a minute and a half advantage, towed back in time for the finish of that single climb. And indeed it was Prades that managed to get up to take the climb, where we understand, and he has added 3 points to his total, so he'll be on 4. Benjamin Hill managed, despite his efforts in the breakaway group a little bit earlier on, he's still at the strength to go for the Hill points. He's added 2 points to his total, he's on 4, and Vitaly Butz, the leader of this classification, has added 1 point, so he's on 4. So all 3 riders that scored are level on points, as we understand it. These all unofficial figures, you understand. We'll wait for full confirmation of that, and just a little bit of encouragement, because Emils Liepens just wanted to spend a little bit more time composing himself before he gets into the rotation.
Yeah, it's interesting. He's been sitting on the back of that group for a couple of kilometers there before he's now starting to move up and take his turn. Not quite sure what the thought was with that, because even for Delco Marseille, it's not a bad thing for him to be in this break. Put a bit of pressure on all the other teams that have been doing the leaders, and I've got to say, Delco Marseille has been really quite impressive in terms of how they've managed to keep that team together in the final couple of kilometers and moving up in a nice formation. Haven't necessarily got the result that they've wanted out of it, but you know, they certainly looked well organised.
Yeah, we'll watch out for Martin Lass at the end of today's stage. Great second place finish yesterday, 6th on the first stage, and as you say, they certainly were packing well. They've got the strength in those final kilometres to put it together, so it hasn't quite happened in the first 2 stages. Perhaps third time lucky for Delco Marseille Provence, and perhaps they're putting all their eggs in the sprinting basket and don't really want to make sense of any contribution. Nice to have a rider up the road, but it's, you know, should the rider make a contribution if he goes up the road? But it might just suit them actually if that one just sits out there. Looks like, in fairness, Emils Liepens was starting to make a contribution, the 25-year-old from Latvia.
Well, I think it would be a good thing, regardless of how hard he pushes up the front there. Now they've still got 7 riders in the bunch, and you know, it's putting a lot of pressure on the other teams to chase harder than.
One of the teams that will be chasing will be the Willier team, because they've got the overall lead. They've got the lead of the points classification, courtesy of the Stage 2 victor, Jakub Mareczko. Abrasturi, who took that great win on Stage 1, was a little bit anonymous on the second stage. He slipped to second overall. He's looking after that green jersey on behalf of Jakub Mareczko, so if you're trying to pick him out a little bit later on, he'll have the leader of the points classification, albeit he's sitting a little bit further back in that, from Jakub Mareczko. Delivered on his pre-event favourite status for the sprints. At any rate, he's done very well in this part of the world in sprints in the first couple of years. The Polish-born Italian rider with the Willier Trestina team really is a star sprinter in the making. Came up with some good solid performances in the Giro d'Italia back in May. Didn't quite manage to deliver the big one, but Jakub Mareczko certainly is one for the future, and came here with star billing in terms of the sprinting. Mareczko, overall leader of this race, just 23 years of age. Best finish indeed of second in the Giro d'Italia. A couple of second place finishes indeed in the Giro back in May, so the big one yet to happen for Mareczko, but he certainly has the legs, and at 23 years of age, plenty of time for that to come. There's confirmation of that hill. I did tell you, Benjamin Prades getting up to get the points on that occasion ahead of Benjamin Hill, who's been second on both classified climbs so far in this year's Tour of Hainan. And Vitaly Butz is sitting in third place at the top of that hill, has added to his points total, and he won the first hill on the first day. 26 seconds, it's hovering there, isn't it? And the bunch lined out suggests that they're not of a mind to let anything get too much legs. And the Willia Trestina team trying to take control here. Bardiani CSF, not too much in evidence in the first couple of days. They've got perhaps bigger fish to fry later in the week. But will they try and get organised for the sprint today?
Well, they were fairly well organised on day one in terms of the lead out, but just didn't quite have the legs in the final couple of 100 meters. But it certainly looks okay. Yesterday they weren't to be seen in the coming into the sprint, but maybe today is something that sort of suits them a little bit better with that sort of, well, I haven't quite decided what I'm going to call it, climb yet, or whether it's just a drag, but certainly a somewhat grippier finish than it has been in the previous 2 days, and that should definitely play in the favour of Bardiani CSF.
Well, that means Leapins is certainly getting the food in. He's not neglecting his nutrition in this back end of the stage. You're not just eating for today, you're eating for the fact that this is a 9-stage race, and we're well into stage 3, heading towards the concluding stage. There's still just under 40 kilometres remaining. Going to get a quick commercial break out of the way. Back to us after these. 5 riders still clear, still dangling off the front of this bunch. The Bardiani, indeed the Willier team more in particular, they are not interested in letting this group get any sort of a decent advantage, so they're closing it down, and they're not giving these guys too much rope. Jordan Cheney, of course, just caught in the closing stages of yesterday's stage, and he's gone out pushing for glory once more this afternoon in the Tour of Hainan, stage 3. Heading down towards Chiang Mai, and it's a little bit dark and overcast, but don't let those images fool you. This is very hot and muggy weather for the riders. Yesterday's longest stage of the race, well, that will have taken its toll. The riders, this is the third shortest stage of the week. The 2 shortest stages bookending this event. The just over 88 kilometers stage 1 was just really playing the riders in. They've got 153 kilometers on the final day, and this one's just over 155 kilometers. For all that, just a little bit shy of 100 miles of bike racing, so it's by no means an easy day out. But look at this, the 2 Italian teams on the front of the peloton. Bardiani CSF watching with interest as their compatriot squad. The Willia Trestina team are not interested in making this easy for any of the riders in that bunch. They are setting a terrific tempo.
Yeah, they're certainly working very hard on the front to keep this break in check, and not really getting any help from any of the other teams. But looking at how the finish was yesterday, I think they're quite confident with Mareczko in the way that he can pick his way through the bunch anyway. They've left Zupa, I think, to help him get up there in the final kilometre or so, and then basically leave Mareczko to his own devices to finish the stage off, should he come down to a sprint. But certainly right now it does look like Willia Trestina do want this to be a sprint. This front group clearly not working all that well together with I think
well, it looks like they're going for the third sprint of the day. Mark Demar, I think it's on the attack, and that's not suiting Jordan Cheney. He's perhaps feeling the effects of that extremely arduous effort in yesterday's stage, and he looks like he's peddling squares a little bit. The 26-year-old from Canada, what a superstar he was yesterday. 3rd on GC in the Tour de Beauce, and 16th on GC at the Tour of Alberta on home soil in 2017. Some solid results. He's going to try and work his way back into that group. Perhaps they'll settle down a little bit after the efforts of trying to score some points in the intermediate sprints competition. We've had a couple of sprints along the way already. Liu of the Heng Chang squad was first to score points, and Mark Demar just trying to get up to get that one. I'm not sure, wasn't Leapins, didn't get a great image of that, but across the line, well, there's going to be a little bit of a consultation, and Leapins looks like he's trying to organise this break. He's plenty of body language there, perhaps not entirely satisfied with the way that that one was played.
Well, I think that it's more the rest of the guys. They're not particularly happy with him, because he's been sitting on for the majority of the time, and then now all of a sudden he starts sprinting as well. That's never really one of those.
Let's get a look at this from the helicopter. Marco Zanotti just races across to the right-hand side just for a little bit of a conversation. Jordan Cheney tries to close up that gap and make sure he can get back into the group. He's managed to get up to Liepens. It's a fair old scrap in among those riders. Great to see the crowds out on the road. This is the 12th edition of the Tour of Hainan. It really has become an established part of the Asian racing calendar. Such an important bike race in this part of the world. And the Willia Trestina squad are gracing it with some very powerful riding on the front of the bunch. 34 kilometers remaining. It's a long, long way for that team to try and control things.
It is a long way, but then again, you've got to invest some of that energy to get it to a sprint, and certainly with Mareshko clearly in good shape. Just messed up the first sprint on day one. Didn't quite get it right into coming into that final corner, but certainly made amends for that yesterday and finished off that sprint in a great fashion. So the Willia Trestina team clearly happy to do the work and do believe in their sprinter.
Well, that's it. I mean, absolute maximum confidence. I mean, he's justified it, hasn't he, with first and second on the first two stages. He's got the overall lead of this race and plenty more sprinting opportunities. It's something we saw, and it's a characteristic of this event. It's very much a race of two halves. Great sprinting opportunities during the week, and then come to the weekend, it's for the GC boys. And we remember with interest 12 months ago, Max Walscheid taking 5 stage victories along the way. Still plenty of, well, you might say, negotiation going on in this breakaway group. They're not quite entirely knitted back together again. We've got Luke Mudgway in the pink jersey here, who's just in front of Liepens. And Liepens, his activities, I think, have certainly set the tone for the pattern of the way that this breakaway group has been riding. These three riders just trying to get back on terms, and Jordan Cheney really looks like he's in pain, doesn't he? But just at the back here, Mudgway.
Yeah, Jordan Cheney yesterday, though, he rode an incredibly strong race. I've got to say, probably not the most explosive rider I've ever seen on a bike, and which is probably why he struggled as the other riders started to pick up the pace for that intermediate sprint, but clearly worked his way in, and looks more like a
climber, yeah.
Time trialist, I would say, but very, very strange position on the bike as well, that sort of tends to, yeah, favour the riders who aren't too explosive.
Well, Luke Mudgway is certainly developing talent, as neat as Jordan Cheney. Cheney, we were talking about, 26 years of age. Luke Mudgway, watch out for him. He's in that pink and black jersey. RTS Monton Racing, the 21-year-old New Zealander. Now their advantage, that little flurry of activity, has actually extended their lead. You might have thought it would have the opposite effect. We pick out Joe Cooper, who was up the road in the break just before we came on air, in the national champions jersey of New Zealand. He's in the middle of the bunch and watching with interest the extraordinary activity of the Willia Trestina squad. It's not extraordinary, but it's certainly very impressive. Drawing this bunch thin and not allowing anyone to no counter-attacks are going to be possible for the next little while. Still three riders out front of the peloton, down to the final 30 kilometers on stage 3 of the Tour of Hainan, as Emils Liepens, well, he took a little bit of time to decide whether he was going to make a contribution. The Delco Marseille Provence squad will be looking to their sprint star last to do something a little bit at the back end, but Liepens at least excuses them chasing duty at the moment, and that's all being left up to the Willia Trestina squad in those red, black and yellow colours on the front of the peloton. The Bardiani CSF squad in the lime green just lined up behind them. Colts just behind those. Those are the way the teams are lining up as it currently stands. Alex Turin for the Willia Trestina squad is doing a decent turn and keeping that gap. Well, the ticker is a little bit sticky at the moment. It's been sitting at 33 seconds for quite a while, but suffice it to say that they're within sight. They're not letting these riders get out of sight, out of mind. They're making sure that they keep them on a relatively short leash, and for all that, it is super impressive work by the riders up the road. Tour of Hainan for 2017 has begun in explosive style with some great racing over the first two stages. This is the Fushan Coffee and Tourism Town. They're very proud of their coffee manufacture. You think of China, you think of tea, don't you? But in 1935, well, Chen Zhangshang returned from overseas and brought with him some coffee beans. So this is pretty much the coffee capital of China. And cafes everywhere. They get up in the morning, they go and get a cup of coffee and eschew the delights of the tea leaf, instead going for the bean. So the Willia Trestina squad is a little bit further back. Bardiani CSF on the blower, just trying to find out what the plan is. And Willia, no shortage of firepower. They're not afraid to put it out there and make sure they take control of this one, and that can be a difficult situation for these squads. But Willia Trestina, as a pro-continental level team, one of 4 pro-conti teams in this event, they know that they have got to take command. They've got the Grand Tour experience, and they certainly have the status, and the other teams will be looking at them to do this job.
Yeah, there will be, but we've got to remember they're sitting with 2 of the jerseys as well in their team, so it's clearly up to them to, respect the jersey and do the riding on the front. But however they're doing it, they're certainly very impressive at the moment, and we've kept that the peloton strong out for some time.
Yeah, we pick out the yellow jersey of Jakub Mareczko, 23-year-old. He's just starting to gravitate up towards the front of the bunch. He's inside 30 kilometers to go now, so it's coming into the business end of this stage. And Vitaly Butz as well there in the white jersey with the polka dots. He's the leader of the mountains classification. It's all level on points, so we're not sure who exactly is going to be leading that one. But the most recent climb went the way of Prades, so perhaps he'll end up with the jersey at the end of the day. Look to clarify the full rules on that one, but suffice it to say, it's been a hard-fought competition so far through these first couple of 4th category ascents. That's for the Cos squad. Mareczko in that yellow jersey, and of course he leads the points competition as well. Mareczko with that distinctive sprinting style, and trademark Caleb Ewan, isn't it? A few years ago, Mark Cavendish got lower than any other sprinter had ever gone over the bars, and Caleb Ewan took that to new extremes in the last couple of years, and Jakub Mareczko with pretty much that kind of a style of sprinting, and it's very, well, it's to the upper limits of what any rider could imagine. I mean, if you tried riding at 30 kilometers an hour over the bars like that, it would be impressive, difficult, and a little bit demanding. To try and do it at 60 to 70 kilometers an hour is extraordinary. Yeah,
it certainly is. Although yesterday, I was going to say, it didn't look like he was 100% in control of that, and starting to drift towards the barriers quite dramatically. At one point, even had to back off his pedal stroke to correct his line. So just needs to be a little bit careful in terms of where he's looking when he's sprinting, because at one point there I thought he was going to scrape his helmet on the front tire.
Well, I mean, the advantages are clearly aerodynamic. I mean, what does it take out of the rider to be able to do it? It's not easy.
No, I think it's not easy, definitely not, and I think it's more difficult to get the jump in that particular position. Once you're up at speed, it's a bit easier to do. But it requires a bit of practice, like everything else. But once you got it nailed, then I think obviously he's making himself incredibly small to the wind.
And the issue of being able to see where you're going, is that something that the commissaires will be looking at?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. It's one of those things. I mean, obviously it's quite a vital part of riding a bike, and looking at yesterday, Mareczko was on his way towards the barriers. But there's nothing the commissaire can really do about that. Well,
it puts you in mind of Jumonadine Abdujabarov in that infamous final stage of the Tour de France.
Yeah.
What year was that? We'll look it up. We'll go on the web. Tell us if you know. But Abdujabarov just wasn't looking where he was going, rode into the barrier, and caused all sorts of confusion behind him.
That's a bit more than confusion, I'd say. There was one major crashed out one.
Yeah, look it up on YouTube if you haven't seen it before. Jumonadine Abdujabarov, the terror of Tashkent, as they called him, and he was an awesome figure in world sprinting back in the late 80s, early 90s. And certainly the sprint from Jakub Mareczko, nothing really like that, but looking where you're going is a very important thing. And I'll tell you what, it's something that a lot of riders don't actually do all the time when they're emerging into bike racing. So if you are interested in cycle racing, make sure you're looking where you're going if you get involved in the early races. Oh, and bottles down, was it?
Yeah.
And as a pro, that's one thing they teach you, isn't it? You've just got to ride over the bottle if possible, not ride around them. But I suppose that's the first instinct, isn't it, to just ride around an obstacle?
Yeah, you always try and avoid it. How you know, it doesn't really matter how you do it. It's an automatic reaction to go around the bottle, because by the time you clip that with your front wheel, then it does tend to send the bike in whatever direction it wants to go, rather than you're in control of it.
I suppose the essence of bunch racing is to make those reactions and try and anticipate what's happening, but not overreact when something happens.
No, you never obviously swerve meters sideways. It's a quick flick of the bike and then back into the same line again. And you know, if you're doing that, if you're just quickly flicking around the bottle on the road, even if you were to sort of swerve towards someone's front wheel there, you're moving out of the way quite quickly again. So even if you get caught hanging on the back wheel of a rider, it's you're usually able to save it. But then again, it comes down to even every rider, regardless of where they are in the peloton, have to pay 100% attention to it. And usually you kind of hear when that bottle hits the ground, and you can see the reaction in the peloton, and you just got to be wise to it.
Well, what great effort from Jordan Cheney. He was distanced when those riders went for that intermediate sprint with 35 kilometers to go. 10 kilometers later, he finds himself just one of 3 remaining riders from that 5-rider counter-attack that formed after that first and only intermediate, climb, King of the Mountains climb. Came with just over 50 kilometers remaining in the stage. This man here, Luke Mudgway, well, he's a compact figure on a bike, isn't he? Really gets low over the bars. Emils Liepins moves through to the front in the blue of Delco Marseille-Provence, the Latvian rider, and the altogether more upright figure, but powerful nonetheless, and very, very impressive over the last couple of days, is Jordan Cheney of the Jelly Belly powered by Maxxis squad from North America. Cheney from Canada himself, 26 years of age, and going for glory once more, 2 days in a row. Can he manage to hoodwink the peloton? Well, their advantage is stretching. It took a long time to go over half a minute. Now it's just easing up towards the 40-second mark, well within the compass, you would say, of the bunch to close this down. But the Willier Trestina team being left to their own devices on the front of the peloton, and they're rotating regularly enough and trying to bring riders back into it. They're going to be left with that chase for quite a while to go yet. 22 and a bit kilometers remaining on stage 3. But keeping close attention on this breakaway group of 3 riders up front in the closing stages of stage 3 of the Tour of Hainan for 2017. It's great resistance here from Emils Liepins in the blue of Delco Marseille-Provence. Luke Mudgway just here at the in the centre of shot in the pink and black, the RTS squad, and Jordan Cheney of Jelly Belly powered by Maxxis up the road for the 2nd day in succession. And Cheney, well, it looks like he's in a world of hurt, doesn't he? In a kind of a way, looks like he's very much isolated in his own world of pain, but he's got 2 riders for company, unlike yesterday, and that could be to his advantage. But for all that, they've managed to shave just a few seconds off their lead in recent moments. The 3 riders up front surviving from that 5-rider group that counter-attacked in the latter stages of this stage as we head down towards Chiang Mai. It's the main settlement in the county is Janchang. Chiang Mai just a little bit inland from our start town today, Haikou. Heading towards the north side of the river Nandu. Martin Lass looking after that green jersey. Great 2nd place finish yesterday. Well placed in the points competition, and Looking after the jersey on behalf of this man, Marechko, leading both overall general classification and the points competitions. Marechko sitting well to the fore now. He's got a couple of teammates in front of him. Ugart Juba just one in front, the Albanian rider, of course, who has made a bit of a name for himself by going in the early break of the World Road Race Championships in Bergen in Norway just a few weeks ago. Spent much of the day out front. Down to the remaining 20 kilometres now, the final 20 kilometres on this stage. Cheney, flick of the elbow.
They're doing a good job out there, these three riders, but you know, at 37 seconds, it's an awful lot of effort to keep going. With 19 kilometers, or almost 20 kilometers to go, it's going to be a tall order to stay clear of the bunch. They just look like they've found that rhythm now, and just keeping these riders at bay. And on these long straight roads, it's you're never really out of sight when you only got that just under 40-second in terms of gap.
Yes, it's well, they are showing the jersey. I mean, it's from their team's point of view, it's great to have the jerseys out there. From the Telco Marseille Provence side of things, well, they're satisfied that they've got a rider who's at least contending for victory. And meanwhile, their sprinter Martin Lass in the green jersey with the blue shorts, just behind those four riders in the all blue colours, just at the bottom of the shot. He's the man that they're going to look to try and propel into the perfect situation at the back end. And as we mentioned a little bit earlier on, Jonathan Kouanon and Mikel Aristi-Gardocki are also very strong riders who've been in the top 10 in the first couple of stages, and they're capable of sprinting well. I think for Telco Marseille Provence, it's about putting it all together, where they perhaps put all their eggs in the one basket, and perhaps Martin Lass could be the one to challenge Jakub Marechko. Jon Aberasturi as well, taking that victory on the first day for Team Ukiah, will want to redress the balance a little bit. He was the outer reaches of the top 20 in yesterday's stage, not really where he wanted to be, just didn't manage to put it all together.
No, I think he just sort of mistimed the positioning in coming into the final couple of kilometers. And you know, we always say that the more technical finishes are more dangerous and difficult to deal with, but in my eyes, a straight running like we had yesterday for probably the last 10 kilometers on the same road, and really quite a wide road in terms of a finish as well, they're more difficult to get right, they're more difficult to position yourself for and keep the position, because you've got that big washing machine going around at the front, and riders are constantly challenging for the top position in the peloton, and with that, it's so easy to sit in fifth wheel, and in a split second you find yourself in 30th, and nowhere really to go, and it's really quite difficult to get yourself out of that sort of place and move up again. Not only is it in terms of maneuvering difficult to pick your way up through the bunch again, just if you do get clear, the energy that you have to spend to get to the front again is also quite significant, and usually it means that you end up coming up short in the sprint.
Yeah, it's all about saving energy where possible as we head down towards the conclusion of this stage. Real contrast in architecture around hereabouts in Chiang Mai County, one of the four counties in Hainan, population of just under 500,000. This, as I say, is the smallest province of all in the People's Republic of China, where golf is increasingly popular, it would appear. Maybe they just like sandpits. So just over half a minute advantage for our three riders up front. Still hanging on to that one. It's not too far to go, but well, the impressive infrastructure in evidence on the Hainan Island to the south of the mainland of China, as we look to try and pick out the main bunch. chasing down our 3-rider breakaway group that have survived from the 5 that counter-attacked in the latter stages of this 3rd stage of the Tour of Hainan, with the Willier Trestina squad taking responsibility for setting the agenda and setting the tempo. And there'll be quite a few riders in there starting to feel the pinch a little bit, and not a few indeed are out of the saddle, just trying to get some relief from the gradient and also the exertions of another long day in the saddle. A few lower backs will be starting to ache a little bit as the rolling nature of the roads is certainly by no stretch of the imagination a hilly stage today. Just one classified climb along the way, but for all that it is a little bit of rolling countryside, and we have got that grippy little finish which could bring it into the compass of one or two of the other riders that haven't managed to produce a decent sprint finish over the first couple of days.
Yeah, interesting to see here now as well. The Ukiyo team are coming up to the front and starting to help out with the pacemaking, and well, I certainly think if we're looking at the first stage with Aberasturi, I think he's definitely going to want to sort of get a bit of a revenge on yesterday's sprint, and he was very impressive on the opening stage.
So the black jerseys of Team Ukiyo now in evidence at the front of the peloton to assist with the chasing down of these 3 riders, showing at 30 seconds, and of course the camera foreshortening the gap between them. But those wide open roads, long straight roads, not really conducive to a breakaway group pinching a little bit of a gap. They'll be well informed, of course, in the bunch behind, but for all that, a twisting road and a narrow road can aid the leaders to grab that advantage. Well, that's not the case at the moment, as we see the Ukiyo squad, those yellow flashes, yellow helmets, making them distinct as the indeed Jon Aberasturi, of course, is the rider that they're looking out for and trying to put into a perfect situation. Great first stage victory for Jon Aberasturi, and can he repeat the alchemy? It's certainly he's been going well in Asia throughout the first couple, well, throughout the 2017 season. A Spanish rider, 28 years of age now. Indeed, he's heading back to pro-continental racing next year with the Euskadi Basque Country Marias squad. So he's a couple of years with Team Ukiyo, was with the Euskaltel squad, the World Tour team, back in 2013, the late lamented Euskaltel squad. A couple of stage wins in the Tour of Qinghai Lake already this year, and that victory in Tour of Hainan, I think, indicating that he's on top form. Stage victories indeed as well in Tour of Korea. So Aberasturi was absolutely ecstatic to put one over Jakub Mareczko, who's got the big reputation. Still sitting at just over half a minute lead for these 3 riders, and motorcycles in between, shielding them a little bit in terms of the view from the peloton behind. "15 kilometers left now, and Aberasturi's squad on the front, aiding and abetting with Willier Trestina. Surprised to see the Team Ukiyo squad come up to help?
No, not really, to be fair. I think Aberasturi really deserves to have the help from his team and try and set him up for a stage win again. But look, if that was me, then I probably would tell my team to back out of that and come back into the bunch a bit more and leave Willier Trestina do the work, waste as much energy out of their legs as possible, and leave these 2 men here, Zupa and Mareczko, to deal with the final few kilometers. The less firepower that the Willier Trestina team has in the final couple of kilometers, the better for the rest of the sprinters, really.
Yes, when squads come from Europe and into a different continent, into Asian continental racing, there's different patterns of racing, different hierarchies in the bunch, in the peloton, in that other part of the world. So it can be difficult to impose their will, and it can take the European squads sometimes a little bit of time to come up to find the rhythm of the racing.
Yeah, it can take a day or two to do that, but I don't think it's got too much to do with you know, the hierarchy as such in the peloton is more a question of, you know, these guys, Ukio team are wanting to ride on the front, and of course at this point, Willie Tristina are going to be very happy to have their help, and that's why I'm saying that if I was the sort of road captain in the Ukio team, I would pull my boys out of there very, very quickly and leave the Tristina team to waste their energy, and only if absolutely necessary in the final sort of 5-10 kilometer would I get to the front, because a 30-second gap, it's not a massive job to shut down, as crazy as that may sound. 30 seconds by the time you really get going with a team behind, chasing down only 3 riders who've been out here for a while now. It's not actually that difficult to do.
It's a good 10 or 15 of those that will go in the sprint alone.
Yeah.
When the big wind-up happens at the back end. So Team Ukio, though, happy to make that contribution at the moment, and holding this one steady at 32 seconds.
Yeah, and saying that as well, though, you know, as a sprinter, when you're sitting back in this long line out here, when you have your team on the front, certain sprinters really get fired up by that. They see that the workload that the team is putting into the race, and with that you kind of get that feeling that I can't let them down. I really got to pull this one off now, and it certainly just raises your game that bit, because the last thing you want to do is let your teammates down when they've done a load of work on the front. So but then that comes, you know, it's different from sprinter to sprinter. Some sprinters don't really, it doesn't matter whether they got that happening or not, they're just on it anyway. But certainly for me, always raised my game that fraction more as soon as I had the boys on the front doing a load of work for me.
Yeah, and some riders really respond to that, don't they? They're heaped with extra responsibility, and they'll step up. They need that. The
pressure.
Yeah. Well, the pressure's on at the front of the peloton at the moment, no question. Pick out some of the faces in there, not just on the front, but even a little bit further down the line amongst the Bardiani riders. This is by no means an easy tempo, and those riders down at the back of the bunch who are coasting along, you might think, in the wake of the riders in front, well, don't be fooled. This is a healthy speed, or unhealthy, I suppose, for some riders. Usman off at the back. 3 up front, their gap now down to 22 seconds, but what a great, impressive work once more for Jordan Cheney. Really manages to windmill that big gear, doesn't he? And he's certainly generating the watts that is keeping himself and his 2 breakaway companions out front. Emil Zalipins, his face starting to show the effects of the efforts that he's made. And what about Luke Mudgway, the 21-year-old New Zealand rider, who's riding with the RTS squad? Just arrived at the team in July, so he hasn't been with them very long. And Mudgway, ex-Avanti Isoway Sport rider, stage win in the Tour of China 2 last year, 3rd on GC in that race. They've got a couple of stage races back-to-back, very prestigious events, as you might expect with that moniker. Tour of Hainan, well, similar prestige in Asian racing. Second on a stage of the New Zealand Cycle Classic as well this year for Luke Mudgway. Real emerging talent from a nation that seems to have a real conveyor belt of talent. It's a small country, and you think, well, pretty much all of them play rugby, but there are 1 or 2 pretty good bike riders down there as well. Yeah,
they certainly do have. I mean, maybe they haven't got the biggest racing scene in the world, but the riders that do come out of there are extremely good. So they're certainly doing something right. And like you said, road riders, there are some good ones, but track, I'd say, even more so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the real conveyor belt of track talent. So down to 22 seconds, and they can just see them. And of course, the 3 riders up front, no question, they're not looking around. They're not interested in finding out just how futile their pursuit might be. But, well, ever so often, and just often enough to make it worthwhile, the riders will manage to hoodwink the bunch and get that victory that will just surprise them. Araque Lorente for Team Ukio, which is packed full of riders of Spanish nationality. Plenty of riders from Europe actually racing on the Asian scene and making their contributions. It's quite a cosmopolitan lineup, this bunch.
Yeah, it certainly is, and I think some of the Asian teams are recognizing that they need a few European riders of a certain level coming into their teams and helping the riders, the young riders that they have, and you know, passing on the experience and so on, and kind of guiding the team. So a rider like Marc Demar, for instance, you know, he would bring an awful lot of experience to his team. Same thing, I guess, coming for the Ukio team there, with a lot of the Spanish riders that have actually been around the block a couple of times and then raced for some big teams. They understand the racing, and they, I think Asian teams and riders really value their sort of input into how things are done, and helping them race their games.
Yeah, Prada is looking like he's heading into the lead of the mountains competition. Could be man to watch for the overall general classification as well when they come to the Queen stage, the penultimate stage on Saturday afternoon. Team Ukio's Benjamin Prades could be a man to watch out for on that occasion. Still, that Team Ukio have other fish to fry, and that's very much in the shape of their sprinter Jan Aberasturi. They have got their team on the front to assist this squad on the front, the Willier Trestina team, and everyone's pulling faces here. It really is a terrific tempo, and it really is a terrific chase. These three up front, we don't perhaps realize when you see the relatively calm and benign body language of the three riders up front. It's only when you pick out the facial features and how they're starting to change a little bit that you get a real sense of how this stage is starting to affect them. 3 days in now, so well, the legs will be relatively well tuned in, and they're not the full week in, but for all that, these have been three tough stages, and these riders are putting it up to the bunch.
Yeah, and also we had the longest stage of the race yesterday, 230 kilometers, so there'll certainly be a few of the guys waking up this morning and feeling the aftermath of that. And it can also throw a bit of a spanner into the works when you're down on coming into a shorter, slightly sort of more explosive stage.
So inside the final 8 kilometers on this third stage of the Tour of Hainan, and this group of three are surely going to be closed down by the peloton, because Willier Trestina are not letting them get up the road or get any decent advantage. At one stage they'd managed to extend this lead up to just over 40 seconds, but then now we see Emile Lipins in the blue of Delco Marseille Provence just having a little look, anxious look around. So too indeed is Luke Mudgway of the RTS squad, and Jordan Cheney of the Jelly Belly powered by Max's team up the road for the second day in succession. Is his heart going to be broken once more? We're sitting well over 45 kilometers an hour, probably a little bit closer to 30 to 50 kilometers an hour indeed, as the bunch charges along in pursuit of our three leaders. Their lead now down to just 15 seconds, and at this point it's less about trying to close down the leaders and more about setting a tempo that's going to discourage any other attacks. One of the giant riders showing the scuff marks from a visit to the pavement, I think, a little bit early on. There have been one or two crashes, and Cheney wants them to press on and press on all the way to the finish. He has got, certainly likes to push.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's riding very, very strong, Cheney. I've been looking at his handlebars, and for some reason he's got his brake levers set up in two completely different heights. I don't know how, if he's not realized himself, or whether it's actually set up like that because of some previous shoulder injury or elbow injury or something like that that can have caused him to need to have his brake levers that dramatically different in height. It's actually visible to the eye from from where we're sitting.
Yeah, that's extraordinary, because even if it sort of slipped a little bit, well, he kind of should be able to pull it back up again. Yeah, so it's an unusual thing, one to watch out for the rider in the white jersey. Jelly Belly powered by Maxis. Looking down at the bunch below, well, those blue jerseys are for the Delco Marseille Provence squad. They've got Martin Lass, who is in fine sprinting form. Emil Zalipins congratulates Jordan Cheney for his great effort, because I think it's worth acknowledging the strength that he's got. These three riders about to be retained by the bunch. Last man standing. Oh, will Jordan Cheney be given the honour? Is it of any relevance? They will just shake hands, coast in, and think of a job well done, showing the jersey on the roads of Hainan province on today's third stage. Still the Team Ukio squad in the black jerseys with those yellow flashes showing to the fore. And the Delco Marseille Provence squad, well, they haven't had to do any chasing, and needless to say, they haven't been to the fore. But now, as their rider has been brought back, they can think about getting up front and down with just under 6 kilometers left. It's time for Delco Marseille Provence to move to the front.
Yeah, this is what they've done the first couple of days as well. They kept themselves nicely near the front of the bunch, and just waited for their moment to start the leader. And I think they've done a great job with that, and keeping themselves together, even regardless of where they've been in the bunch, when they've sort of got into the final couple of kilometers and really made their way forward, but not managed to capitalize properly on the work that they've done. But if you keep on trying, then sooner or later you'll get it right. This is a very, very long straight bit of road for the riders to deal with.
It's pretty much a straight run in. There isn't really too much complication in terms of roundabouts or bends of any significance. Straight run in, but it does have that little grippy little rise to the line that will catch riders out that aren't able to time their move. Riders and teams, indeed. Just trying to time it is the big issue. William Trestina still on the front, but now I think their necks will be starting to burn a little bit, because they've got the entire bunch now in a very different mood. Riders still that have the strength are going to try and make their way up to the front. Pretty much everyone's pulling faces, though. This has been another tough day in the saddle. Delco Marseille Provence in the green, in the blue colours in the centre, and their sprinter, of course, Martin Lass, in the green jersey, points leader's jersey at the moment. And Bardiani CSF just trying to pull a fast one. And that is a little bit unusual. They had Enrico Barbin, who's been sprinting well, but not coming up with any significant result in the first couple of days. So maybe Bardiani CSF thinking more about overall, and any chance of a stage victory is going to come from a solo raid.
Yeah, I think you're right. Maybe they certainly haven't brought their fastest sprinters to this race. I think they're more looking at the general classification, but Tonelli, who's managed to get himself back in after his crash and is now on the move instead.
Well, I wonder how that brake lever is doing. But he's up the road. He's got this scuff marks on the on his right hand shoulder, indicating that he was on the deck with just over 50 kilometers remaining. Back in, safely in, and safely up the road. Alessandro Tonelli of the Bardiani CSF team. And this looks like a useful move. Just under 4 kilometers remaining in the stage. He's going to need a little bit more than he's got, but nobody willing to take it up at the moment and really commit to this final. It's just that little window of opportunity. Yeah,
it was a window of opportunity there, but what I think you're seeing here on the screen is that the fact that there are a number of teams taking up the chase. It just it looks a little bit unorganized. We're basically having a drag race at the moment with 3.5 kilometers to go to the finish. Everyone wants to be near the front, not necessarily on the front, but with that, yeah, it just looks a bit scrappy.
Scrappy it is. Looks like it's not going to work out for Alessandro Tonelli. Brave effort. So just coming up to 3 kilometers remaining on stage 3 of the Tour of Hainan. Wilier Triestina have done manful and great work in closing down that counter-attacking break, and now they leave it up to their sprinter to see what he can manage to achieve. Jakub Mareczko, the overall race leader. The Col squad go to the front. They've got Vitaly Butt sitting second in line here as the Col's team try to see can they perhaps come up with a sprint victory to go with their mountains lead they currently control. Delco Marseille Provence in the centre of the shot. The Bardiani CSF team were firing riders up the road in solo fashion. The Wilier Triestina squad have gone back in their box a little bit, but they'll come back into this one. Again, watch out for Jugert Jupa, who's looking after the yellow jersey of Jakub Mareczko. Mareczko, the centre of shot. And indeed, they've got 3 riders. So Mareczko's going to surf up the left-hand side of the bunch. Watch out for the yellow jersey there, and 3 Wilier Triestina riders just in front of him. Bardiani CSF are noticeable and visible in the green jerseys. The blue jerseys, that's Delco Marseille Provence, and that's Martin Lass. That's going for glory. And on the right-hand side, Team Ukio, those black jerseys with the yellow flashes. And they'll be prominent with Jon Aberasturi. 2 kilometers remaining on stage 3. The big wind-up begins. We're getting the sprint that was anticipated. And Wilier Triestina, as the gradient starts to grip, have got control of the peloton once more.
Yeah, they just moved up just in the right time there to start putting some more pressure onto the front of the bunch again, with Mareczko sitting round about just inside the top 10 position there. You got a number of blue riders from Delco Marseille, and then just in front of that you got Mareczko in his yellow jersey.
It looks like Jelly Belly powered by Maxis might have put a rider up to the front as well, as other teams just tried to surprise the others, and looks like it could have been Joe Cooper, the New Zealand national road race champion. It was in the early break of the day that was retained, but he still got the strength to do a job for his team. And Joe Cooper, the Isoway Sports squad, have put him onto the front and charging for glory as we come down towards the final kilometre.
And he did a great job yesterday as well, doing some impressive turns on the front. 900 meters to go.
Michael Freeberg is the man that's sprinting for them. The Isoway Sports Swiss Wellness in the black jersey, but it's the Bardiani squad on the front. Here come the yellow jersey team of the Wilier Triestina on the right-hand side of shot. Col's also trying to get involved into the back end, and Mareczko looks like he's ready to launch in the centre of shot. Where is the yellow jersey? Yeah, he's just dropped back a little bit. Bardiani are going to control into the final 500 meters. The Bardiani CSF squad, have they got Enrico Barbin to time this one nicely? There are other teams that want to try and pick it up as we come down into the closing stages and launching from the middle of the pack. This one is not quite as organized. And here comes Mareczko. Mareczko's managed to get himself into perfect position. That distinctive sprinting style is surely going to take him to a second successive victory. Mareczko gets up in fine style just at the death to take victory, take the second stage, or take the third stage as well as the second stage of Tour of Hainan. Jakub Mareczko delivers for the Wilier Triestina team. They're on the front for so much of the afternoon. He points at the yellow jersey, he points at the Wilier logo, and that was a perfect team performance and perfectly executed by Jakub Mareczko.
Yeah, that was impressive how he managed to find his way through the bunch there as well, because he really did look out of position at one point with about 400 meters to go, and then just picked his way through the bunch there. Just got dragged into the right position by the other riders opening up their sprints a fraction early. And Mareczko then had the acceleration to get around. But what a great ride again by the whole team of Wilier Triestina Italia.
Yeah, well, they quickly assembled for the congratulations, and that was an absolutely perfect team performance. And Mareczko, well, they put it up to him and he was able to deliver, surfed his way through. At one stage, as they say, it looked as if he dropped out of position, but he's just so he's low over the bars there, but he managed to stay as anonymous as he needed to do, and the others are denied. And there really was absolutely the issue not in any doubt into the final couple of 100 meters. Al-Barasuri looks like getting up for second. We wait for full confirmation. He's a two-time stage winner in the Tour of Hainan of 2017. His lead in the overall classification will be extended. His lead in the points competition will be extended, and he's got a second victory on the stages for Jakub Mareczko of the Willier Trestina squad. Aberasturi not able to do anything about Mareczko's perfect timing, stunning power. Let's look at it from the overhead. Aberasturi came with a really late charge, and I think there'll be a sense of frustration really that just didn't time that one. Look at the gap.
Yeah, Aberasturi also got himself boxed in the final sort of few hundred meters, and when he found his way out, it was really impressive in terms of his sprint.
Yeah, Martin Lass in the green jersey for Delco Marseille Provence, not able to replicate his second place finish, just dropping back a little bit in the late stages, and looked like Freeberg was well to the fore in the final sprint as well. High fives all round. Mareczko heads to the podium once more. Mareczko replicating the performance of Max Walscheid from 2016 in multiple stage successes in this Tour of Hainan. A distinctive and characteristic sprinting style. He's looking up, and he went in a straight line the whole way. It was perfectly executed sprint.
Yeah, definitely. It was just a masterclass in how to pick your way through a bunch and find those gaps, and just a really, really well-timed sprint. Open up with 200 meters to go. At that point, there was just no question of who's going to be who.
Well, there's confirmation of the finishing order on stage 3, with Mareczko getting up to take a second successive stage victory ahead of Aberasturi, Jacopo getting up for third, Nadon, Freeberg, Lass, Trosakis, Kulik and Dylan Page into the top 9 for the Swiss national team. Scrolling down through the top 20, those riders, many of them just satisfied to make sure they were in the bunch, others a little bit dissatisfied with the fact that they didn't quite manage to come up with the sprint success they might have hoped for. It's Jakub Mareczko that can celebrate once more. He's starting to put his stamp of authority. Aberasturi, well, was finishing perhaps the fastest rider in the last 20 meters of the race, but by then Mareczko was already preparing his victory salute.